Here we go. Let me go ahead and let's get this party started. Routing versus switching. And the questions, by the way, are all based on the exact same topology. So I gave you a little more time on this first question because the topology doesn't change. And Wally, I see you're asking for the link. It just go to, oh my gosh, it's not shown. Let me show it real quick. It's right here at the very bottom, kahoot.it, and the game pin is 125583. My apologies on that. Oh, let me hide my toolbar. All right. Now, this is a tricky question, and I did want to, my intention was to give you a little more time with the diagram up front. So let me bring up the diagram. Let's talk about this just for a moment. We'll all get on the same sheet of music, and then we will proceed. I do appreciate everybody who's here. Time is the one thing that we all have a limited quantity of, and getting better at Cisco and better at your skills is a fantastic thing. So fantastic. All right, so let me point out this topology. So we have PC1, PC2. They are both connected to access ports on this layer 2 switch. They are in different VLANs. VLAN 10 for this port, VLAN 20 for this port. And then there's a trunk going between switch 2 and switch 1 and switch 2. And these are layer 2 switches, so there's no routing here. And then there's a access port in VLAN 11. I'm sorry. And there's an access port here, port 11, that goes to R1. And then R1 is connected to server 2 and also to another cloud. And there's some other noise happening up here. A lot going on. I know. But the cool, here's the cool thing. Let me bring up my camera. The cool thing is that this topology will not change for all the questions. So you don't have to relearn it and rememorize it. You just say, okay, here's the topology, and I need to focus on the question. Because if we had an hour, we could sit here and study the topology and all the nuances. But just having a lay of the land of where the ports are and what the devices are is going to be helpful. So for this question, which interface IP address should PC1 use as a default gateway? I would, with your permission, I'd like to walk through this for a moment. So PC1 is right here, and PC1 has to have a default gateway in its own VLAN. So the only other device that's in this VLAN that has a layer 3 interface that for routing purposes is this firewall. And you might say, well, Keith, this is, CCNA isn't security. Well, most networks have firewalls. And it's also important just to be aware that most firewalls are routed firewalls. So when you see a firewall, think of it like a layer 3 router with an attitude. It's like, I'm being very choosy about what packets I choose to forward, although I can. So when you think of a firewall, think of a layer 3 routing device, which is how it's normally deployed. And if there's exceptions to that, there might be, but think of it like a layer 3 routing device. So PC1's default gateway would have to be this firewall, which is port number 8, interface 8. So which interface IP address should PC1 use as the default gateway? It would be whatever the IP address is on this interface of the firewall would be the correct default gateway for PC1. Now, what I'm hoping behind the scenes is, I'm hoping that that's one of the answers, would be the firewall interface 8, and it is. All right, so that's probably one of the toughest questions. But now that we're warmed up, and 17 of you nailed it, which is fantastic, let's take the next question. And here it is. Good luck, everybody. All right, so I am an avid watcher of other people's content. I'm a learner. I'm studying right now. What am I studying? SD-WAN with vSmart, vBond, vManage, and the vEdges and configuring it all. It's a lot of fun, but I'm learning from other people. I watch videos on YouTube. I watch other training material to kind of learn it. Well, I was watching Network Chuck, which, Network Chuck and I have known each other for years, and I love his new content. For CCNA, it's amazing. That's the only thing to say about it. And as I was watching his content, I saw him do a packet tracer lab, and one of the outputs, one of the commands he issued was show MAC-address-table, which is answer, I'm looking here, it's answer green. And that used to be the actual command, like in iOS version 11 and 12. And so I guess that on one of the switches, he was on an older flavor, which is cool. But I wanted to confirm that the current command here is MAC space address-table. 47 of you got it correct. And here's the good news. As you practice more and more with hands-on, whether it's packet tracer or live gear or what have you, you'll become more and more familiar with those commands and be able to better use them when you get to a production environment as well. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next question. Focused Wildcat is at the top of the heap. All right, here's question 3 of 8. Good luck, everyone. All right. Let's take a look at this. Let me get out my mouse. All right, so if PC2, just want to make sure I do this with you here. If PC2, that's this guy. This is how I'd approach it in a lab environment as well, or an exam environment. If PC2 sends an ARP request, and that's going to be a broadcast. So that's going to be a layer 3 broadcast. Actually, I take it back. It'll be a layer 3 and a layer 2 broadcast. So it says, for our purposes, this layer 2 broadcast gets pumped in. Switch 1 is going to forward that on all ports associated with VLAN 4, including, VLAN 20. I was looking at number 4. VLAN 20, including this trunk, and this is also VLAN 20 here. So that ARP request would be learned, and the answer should be that switch 1 would learn about that MAC address here on port 4, and switch 2 would learn it on port 6. And as I look at my answers here, let's hope that's an answer. So switch 1 on port 4, switch 2 on port 6, switch 1 on port 4, switch 2 on port 6. Oh, thank goodness. I'm grateful for small things. All right, but that's how I would sort it out. Like, which VLAN is it in? Where would that broadcast go? And where would each of the switches learn? I still remember when I was first learning networking and switching. I remember my first trainer back in the late 90s. Yeah, I think it was late 90s. Johnny Bass was my first trainer that I went to learn multi-layer switching with almost a decade and a half ago or so. Anyway, I still remember not realizing that a MAC address is learned on more than just one switch. So instead of just having a switch and having, let me bring up the full screen here. Instead of having a switch and saying, oh, just this one switch knows where that MAC address is because the source MAC address on the device setting frames in, it's going to be also downstream devices that are trunking or extending that VLAN that are also going to be learning about that client's MAC address, even though they're not on the same local switch. So I still remember the moment like, oh yeah, I get it. It's important because the better we understand how networks work and how it operates, then when things go south or not working, we can use our troubleshooting skills to say, well, this should be this should be that, why isn't it happening? And then solve the problem. Because a lot of engineering, a lot of network technician work is troubleshooting. So the more familiar you are with it, and it's all a skill, by the way. No one's ever born, I'm a genius at this. I'm not a genius at anything. But I'm pretty darn good at networking, and that's because of practice. And I want to share that with you and have you get those same types of skills and beyond. All right, let's continue on with our next question. And that next question is this. Question 4 of 8, we're halfway there, or almost halfway there. All right, 15 seconds left. I had to throw one zinger in there, and all of these statements are true. Let's just confirm why that is true. And let me bring out my pen once again. All right, the first answer was PC1 can't use R1 as the default gateway. So here's PC1, there's R1. The problem is you can't use a default gateway that's in a different VLAN. Can't reach it. So PC1 cannot use R1 because R1 is in VLAN 20, PC1 is in VLAN 10. All right, good to go. Second option was PC2 can't reach server 1. Why is that? Okay, so here's PC2, here's server 1. Why can't we just route up there? This is the 1030 network. He's down in VLAN 20, which is the 1020 network. Why can't we have PC2 get to server 1? And the answer is, you know what? What I'd love you to do is go ahead and chat in, either if you're looking at this after the fact in the comments, or if you're watching this live and participating, Chat in why that is. Why is it that PC2 can't access server 1? If you know the answer to that, I would love you to post that in. And as you're thinking about that and putting that in, let me go ahead and just get my pen over here. There we go. And if I have several screens that are open at the moment, so I won't peek over there. But if you're saying, well, Keith, there's no layer 3 routing between VLAN 20 and this network up here, 1030, and even in VLAN 10, VLAN 1010, network 1010, that's right. There's no layer 3 routing. This is a layer 2 switch. It's got no routing capability. And in order to get from one VLAN to another, from one logical subnetwork in that VLAN to another, there has to be a layer 3 routing function. Now, that layer 3 routing function could be a multi-layer switch with switch virtual interfaces. That'll work. It could be a router with physical interfaces. It could be a router on a stick. It could be a firewall that has routing capabilities between those networks. But it's got to be some router, some device, some layer 3 device that has routing capability. All right, so that's why answer PC2 can't reach server 1. Let me clear off that screen. And the other option was server 1 can't reach server 2 for the same reason, and that is because we have no routing capability between those networks. And then PC1 can't get to cloud 2, again, because we have no routing in place between any of these. The only routing we have, in fact, is between this firewall and network 1030 and network 1010, which is directly connected to, and R1 can route between 1040, and it could route between that and this network, which is VLAN 20, which is 10.20. That's it. That's the only routing we have. There's no routing beyond that between those two networks. All right, a little bit of a thought-provoking question there. Hopefully we would never design a network like that, but I do want to point out that if you're working with Packet Tracer and labbing things up, this is how you can discover that. Like, you can start building things in Packet Tracer or physical gear, either way, and it's like, why can't these connect? And that process of discovery is rocking, because you can go and say, well, why can't they connect? And then walk through the process, and that troubleshooting will serve you in spades. I mean, as an old term for, it'll be amazing the benefit you can get from building a network. Why doesn't it work correctly? Troubleshooting it, and then taking that knowledge, putting it in your tool belt as a resource, and continuing on. All right, let's take a look at our next question. And actually, let's take a peek at the scoreboard real quick, see who's on top. And we've got Diligent New on top with 6,276 points. And that's amazing. Here we go, question 5 of 8. Good luck, everyone. All right, the firewall issued an ARP request, which is a broadcast. Which of the following are true? Choose 2. And let's just take a look at that real quick. Let me bring up the media. So if the firewall, which is this bad boy right here. Also, one thing I want to talk to you about regarding firewalls. I just took a peek at some of the comments that were saying, oh, we don't have connectivity or it won't work because of firewall rules and so forth. Here's the secret with firewalls. If a firewall, which is a layer 3 device most of the time that forwards packets based on layer 3 routing, if it doesn't have a route, that traffic's not moving. So routes are required as a fundamental element before we start taking a look at access control list and rules and application inspection that might otherwise deny the traffic. So routes first, and then the heavier decisions about, okay, should I forward this or should I not forward it based on where it's coming from? So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, so the firewall issued an ARP request. Congratulations, Mr. Firewall. You did a layer 2 broadcast right there. Oh, it doesn't actually say where it did it. I should rewrite that because it could have done an ARP request out here trying to resolve the layer 3 address or the layer 2 address of server 1. Anyway, my intention was here. Which of the following are true? And this MAC address of the firewall would be learned on switch 2 port 7 because the switch, as you probably already know, is looking at the source layer 2 addresses and associating those with the port. So switch 2 would say, oh, I know the firewall's layer 2 address is associated with this port, port number 7. And the second true answer would be switch 2, because it's a broadcast. Switch 2 would be forwarding that over the trunk. It would be tagged for the appropriate VLAN, which is VLAN 10. And then the switch 1 would learn on port 5 the layer 2 address of the firewall. And it not only would say, hey, I know the firewall's MAC address on this port, but it'd also say, I also know it's in VLAN 10. And you might ask yourself the question, well, how does it know? How does it know that it's in VLAN 10? And the answer is 802.1. Finish the sentence for me. 802.1 something on the trunk. And 802.1q is the tagging mechanism we're using. So when switch 2 sent that over to switch 1, it said, hey, here's this frame. Here's its VLANs associated with, which in this case is VLAN 10. And the switch receiving that said, oh, great. I know this source MAC address is associated with this port, and it's also associated with this specific VLAN. And that's how it can keep track and make sure those layer 2 boundaries of VLANs are being reinforced. Okay, that was fun. That was fun to create. It was also fun to have us go through that exercise. I appreciate everybody. And I think we have a few more questions. And here we go. Question 6 of 8. Good luck, everyone. All right, 76 correct answers. Fantastic. Let's take a look at why that is. Which port would switch 1? So switch 1 is right here, a layer 2 switch. Which port on that switch would it associate with PC1's default gateway MAC address? You know what? In like in high school and stuff, I never really appreciated word problems too much. A lot going on there. But this is definitely kind of a word problem. So what we need to find out is whose MAC address are we paying attention to? It's the default gateway's MAC address that PC1 is using. So if this is PC1, the default gateway would have to be the firewall interface. So we're talking about the layer 2 address of port 8 here on the firewall. And then where would switch 1 learn that? And switch 1, as we talked about in the previous question, would be learning that on its port 5. So I think the correct answer here would be switch 1, port 5, final answer. And Oh, good, it's there. I'm always happy when the actual correct answer is there on the screen. So that's the process. Now the goal here isn't for us to memorize like which port or what, but the goal is for us to say to ourselves, how well do I know this? How do I understand the pieces? And also, if it's like I completely got that wrong, I don't even know how that worked. Hey, reach out on Discord. Reach out and say, hey, can somebody walk me through this? Or you can hit me up on my channel on this video. If you can leave a comment, just put the timestamp for the video. Like, hey, on this question at this timestamp, I don't understand. Here's my thoughts on it, and can you help me understand why? And I'd be happy to do that. You can also reach me in Discord. So the best way to reach me in Discord these days is just do a direct message for me. There's a link for Discord in the video description. Just do a direct message to me. I check that 2 or 3 times a week, and I always follow up with everybody. And it may be just a quick response, or if you want to have a quick call or conversation, if you're patient with me for a few days, I respond to everybody. And I just love helping people grow and continue and move forward. So please take advantage of that resource. 76 of you got that absolutely correct. So congrats on that. Let's see who's on the top of the podium. Diligent New is still up there, 8,655 points. We have 2 more questions. And here is question number 7. Awesome, awesome, awesome. A lot of great answers here. Here's how I would approach this. If I was asked to choose 3 and there's only 4 answers, I would look for the one that is not true. That's how I would personally attack this. If 3 are true, I would just look for the one that's not true. That way you don't have to study all the details. So as we go through these, let me point out the one that's not true. And I just look at the answer and say, oh, that's true, this is not true. So here is the scenario. PC2, right here, it does a ping to server 2. Fantastic. So basically, this is tricky because there's a lot of, I'm looking at the questions now, I'm like, wow, there are 4, I have to think through 4 different possibilities. But the one that's not true is that it says switch 2, this guy, knows the MAC address of interface 14, which is the server's layer 2 interface address on his interface there on port 11, and that's not true. Switch 2, because server 2 is not in the same broadcast domain, not in the same VLAN, will never see the layer 2 address of server 2, and that's because it's separated by this layer 3 interface, this layer 3 device called a router. So switch 2 will never know. I mean, it can make guesses. It could say, I think his layer 2 address, but switch 2 will never know the layer 2 address of the server 2 because they're not in the same VLAN, not the same network, and so it won't happen. All right, let's take a look and see if we have any more questions. Was that the last one? Let's see. Arctic Falcon has taken first place. I think there's one more question. No pressure, but this is for all the money. Here we go. Good luck, everybody, on the final question. All right, 2 correct answers. I debated on whether or not to say how many correct answers there were, but I thought, man, these are pretty tricky, so I'm going to narrow the field. The correct answers were the ones that are shown, but let's talk about why that is. Do a little education on the way there. So R1 sends an ARP request. So in an ARP request, that is a layer 2 broadcast. And what switches do when they receive that, they're going to forward it on all other ports in the same VLAN. Now, it's not going to send it back out that same interface that it learned it on, but it's going to send it to all other ports. So there's no other access ports here in VLAN 20. Let me get that number right. And we do have a trunk. Now, by default, on a trunk, it's allowing all VLANs by default. Now, you can restrict that. That's true. But by default, they're all allowed. So switch 2 would forward that broadcast out port 6, which would cause switch 1 to learn that or receive that on port 5. So now switch 1 knows that R1's 12 interface layer 2 address is whatever it is, and it's associated with VLAN 20 where it came in on. And then it would continue to forward that, which means it would forward it out this access port, which is also in VLAN 20. So the 2 answers should be that switch 2 will forward it out port 6, and switch 1 will forward it out port 4. And if there were other ports shown and they were trunks or in the same VLAN, it would be sent there as well. So let's go ahead and close this and let's take a look. By the way, thank you everybody for participating and studying and getting better. It's important. You know, learning new things that are valuable build good in other things that are valuable. And keep building your skills. That's the secret. Mighty Tiger! Whoop, 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 whoop. Nice, nice, nice. With runners up, a couple there too. And let me go ahead and let me get your feedback as well. So go ahead on your apps or the browser, go ahead and give me your feedback. That'd be awesome. That way I know exactly what I can focus on in the future. Also, what I've done is I've collected, let me make sure my screen's up. I've collected a list of those questions which are most often incorrectly answered, and I'm going to make some additional training on those pieces as well to make sure we're solid on it. Also, I've looked at the Kahoots that I've done for the last several months, and there's a lot of them. And they're all in a playlist too. So here's some tips that can really help you. As you study something, so you have your full course of study material, whatever that is, maybe it's a video series or a book or whatever, or both. As you're studying a topic, go back and check out, first of all, subscribe to make sure you can find me easy, Keith Barker here on YouTube. And then I have a playlist called the CCNA quizzes. And then if you're studying spanning tree or you're studying routing or switching or trunking or layer 2 security, there's Kahoots on each one of those. And that way you can just go back to those Kahoots, scrub through them, say, okay, boom, do I know this? Do I know this? Do I know this? It's a great way to practice. So I would say use this as a resource and come back to it whenever you need to, and make sure you understand the technology. Because the thing is this, as a double CCIE, I have committed myself to perpetual learning. That's the secret. It's not just, oh, I'm going to learn this information and I'll be done. No, the secret is learn, enjoy the process, and then keep on going. Sean Cannell, who I watch a lot of his videos, he's Think Media, great guy, just willing to share anything. He used a phrase the other day that just struck me. It was, you can't steer a parked car. If we're not moving, if we're not, it's hard to steer a parked car. And so we need to keep on studying, keep on learning, and keep on growing. So I wanted to share that with you. Also, I'm working on my new digs. There's still a lot to do here. But it's so great to have you. I have a meeting just after with somebody on Discord that I'm going to be meeting with. In the past, people have congregated in the CCNA voice chat room. I think that can still happen if you want to. I may not be there today, but feel free to use that resource. And as we go, a couple things. Click on subscribe. That way you can find me. I mean, there's a lot of content out there. If you want the double CCIE who can give you the straight scoop and help reinforce concepts, you want to be able to find Keith Barker, the OG of IT, click on subscribe. That way you can find me a lot easier. And then if there's a video that comes up that may not be interesting to you, great. Wait for the next one. There's going to be more and more and more all the time. The second thing would be commit. If you have been studying for your CCNA for more than 6 months, it's time. It's time for you to say, okay, when am I going to take my next exam, or when am I going to take that exam? And commit to it and be accountable to somebody. You can be accountable to me, I just hit the mic, sorry, to a pet, to somebody on social media, to a loved one, somebody who will check on you and say, did you do what you said you were going to do? Like, I'm taking another exam this month. It's August of 2020. and it's in RC, and I get asked on social because I committed to it. Have you taken it yet? No, the month's not up, but before the end of the month, I will have taken that exam, and I'll give you a quick report on how it goes. But I love learning; it's so much fun. I wish you the best of success in your studies. If we can be helpful here on this channel, the Keith Barker channel, please feel free to take advantage of that, as well as the free Discord server here. Anything we can help you in getting your career moving forward in the right direction or starting a new career in IT, we're happy to help. So I'm looking for my right button over here, and I'm going to say goodbye for now. Catch y'all later. Thanks, everybody, for playing.